Breaking: two young boys found dead with disturbing connection to Clintons. And it's the worst yet, by Amanda Shea for Freedom Daily. The shocking number of dead bodies accumulating around the Clintons cannot be considered a coincidence any longer, especially now that the youngest potential victims have been identified under truly tragic circumstances. The most scandalous couple in political history's body count seems to be on the rise once again after a brief reprieve of no sudden mysterious casualties. The latest is possibly the most shocking yet, as children have never been a part of the equation, but now seem to be. The casualties that keep accumulating around this crooked woman with major secrets she's desperate to keep hidden, no matter who she has to kill off to ensure it has reached an unprecedented level that cannot or should not be ignored any longer. With President Donald Trump in charge, new incidents that may have gone unnoticed in the past 2 terms, too long administration, are now being brought into question, namely when people with certain connections wind up suddenly dead under insane circumstances. It should be investigated, and now, thankfully, it is. The 2 victims, which are the youngest fatalities tied to the Clintons yet, deserve justice, as do their families, who didn't have any hope of getting any answers until now. The bodies of 17-year-old Kevin Ives and his friend Don Henry, who was 16 years old, were found dead on railroad tracks near Mena, Arkansas. This location, being near the Clintons' hometown, wasn't the only connection these teens seemed to have to the scandalous couple. There was something else very specific about the small town of Mena. The pair were more than victims of an unsolved case, as a mother's 30-year mission to solve it has since been uncovered. The boys died in 1987 in what was described as an unsolved murder case, and now 3 decades later, new information seems to be surfacing in the mix of other strange sudden deaths tied to the Clintons and what appears to be a killing cartel connected to their deep secrets. Clinton appointed state medical examiner Dr. Fahmy Malak initially ruled the boys' deaths as accidental. So, in other words, he was a Clinton-appointed medical examiner. You see? Despite the apparently obvious signs of homicide, not suicide, or simply being on the tracks at the wrong time, which would suggest an accident. However, what really put Mena on the map has not been talked about too much until recently, after it was reported as having been used for one of the busiest drug smuggling operations in the world in what eventually became known as the Iran-Contra scandal. The boys reportedly died on the tracks by being run over by a train after allegedly falling asleep there. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that napping on the train tracks is not a good idea or comfortable idea, no matter how mischievous these teens are. What may have, for whatever reason, seemed like a strange explanation for a tragic event, it only gets more precarious now that other information has surfaced that wasn't available in the 80s as the Clintons were pursuing their political careers, namely that an out-of-state examiner said the cause of death was clearly murder by beating and stabbing before they were placed on the railroad tracks. Your Newswire reports key operatives in Iran-Contra were George Bush, Oliver North, Dewey Claridge, John Poindexter, and Caspar Weinberger. The entire operation, however, would have to have bipartisan efforts. This would require the cooperation of former CIA operative and then Governor Bill Clinton. The presumption was that the boys fell asleep on the tracks and the train ran over them. what initially appeared to be a grossly incompetent investigation was actually an orchestrated cover-up. Residents reported small, low-flying airplanes coming in at slow speeds over the tracks in the middle of the night with their lights off just prior to revving up and flying away. Linda Ives, Kevin's mother, became suspicious of the boys' deaths with all of these rumors. After fighting the Arkansas justice system for several years, she won exhumation and re-autopsy. This is when the second cause of death, indicating murder, was identified. The murder case was assigned to police investigator John Brown from the get-go. The case file was in shambles. You can imagine why. Key crime scene photographs were missing. The entire list of any evidence was gone. It also appeared that no one from 1987 to 93 had interviewed anyone of significance in the case. John Brown's investigation was shut down and he resigned, but not before the following piece could be put together. Apparently, the boys were deer hunting that night. They had no idea that the tracks were used by MENA pilots as a site for dropping off drugs and money, and that a drop had gone missing 3 nights previously, causing panic at MENA. The concern was not the missing $400,000, but the missing transmitter that was in the case with the money. If someone found this, it would be traceable right back to MENA. In a classic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, Kevin and Don stumbled right into a police-protected drug drop site where law enforcement officials and drug smugglers were waiting to see who might show up. The boys were chased down and taken to another location. At that point, they were beaten and stabbed. Then their bodies were placed on the tracks in hopes that all evidence of the murder would be distorted by the train mangling the bodies. A U.S. Senate subcommittee in 1989 called the available evidence about MENA insufficient for an indictment on money laundering charges, but the feds scrapped a 5-year probe of MENA and interfered in local investigations. The state police were taken off the case. Clinton refused a request from one of his own prosecutors to pursue the matter any further. In spite of the evidence, every investigator who has tried to expose the crimes of MENA has been professionally destroyed. ArkansasOnline.com reports, the enduring mystery surrounding the boy's death led to the mother to file a lawsuit last year seeking to force 8 federal agencies and 3 Arkansas-based law enforcement agencies to produce any and all documents amassed over the past 30 years that may provide some answers. The lawsuit accuses the agencies of violating the Federal Freedom of Information Act by failing to turn over complete documents in response to requests Ives and her Little Rock attorney R. David Lewis filed in 2012. Excuse me. The request sought all information the agencies may have in their archives pertaining to Kevin Ives or Barry Seal, a pilot who in 1985 testified that he smuggled tons of cocaine from Colombia to drop zones in the Louisiana swamps and was assassinated in 1986 in his hometown of Baton Rouge. Rumor has it that Seal, who flew regularly in and out of the MENA airport, was initially hired by the CIA to fly low, over Central American countries, taking photographs of rebels, and then began smuggling drugs back into the United States for extra cash. Talk of low-flying planes in the area where the boys were run over by the train led to suspicions that their deaths might have had something to do with drug drops, and that perhaps they were killed and then laid out on the tracks to cover up any evidence of murder because they witnessed or tried to intercept a drop. There is additional interesting information, including an in-camera review conducted by a judge in private that coincides with the recent release of a movie, American Made, based on the saga surrounding Seal, which you can read here. This information adds extensive information that bolsters witnesses' accounts and must be looked at closer, especially with specific regard to how and why these teen boys died 3 decades ago. Well, you know that they're tied to the Clintons. There's no way. They couldn't fall asleep on train tracks. They're not stupid. So, again, they interfered in this, what happened, and, it's a shame, and anybody tied to them or interfering with them, you know what basically happens. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and again, thank you so much for watching.